Oh, great. Thank you, Paula. Thank you for inviting me. And it's great to be a guest again on Mandaya TV.
Thank you, Paula. We're ready to listen to your talk. The screen is yours.
All right. So there were these two monks walking along the road, a younger monk and an older monk. And they walked along the road until they came to a stream. And at the edge of the stream, they encountered a scorpion. And the scorpion just begged them to take him across the stream. So the younger monk said, okay, but promise that you will not sting. And the scorpion said, oh, of course, I will not sting. I just want to get across. So the older monk took the scorpion in his hand, and they crossed the stream. And as soon as they were on the other side, the scorpion bit the monk and ran away. And the older monk fell to the ground. So the younger monk was furious, and he said, I want to chase after the scorpion and kill him. And the older monk, with his dying breath, said, don't do that. It was just his true nature. So the young monk was stunned, and he said, well, if you knew that, why did you pick him up? And the older monk said, because that was my true nature. So how many of you understand your true nature and what it is and how you're going to use it? Don't worry, because by the end of our presentation, you will have a much better understanding of what true nature is, what's in the way of expressing it, and how to fix that. You will have new tools how to dissolve obstacles that are in your way, including so-called negative emotions, and you will dramatically increase your self-acceptance. I'm Paula Oleska, a best-selling author, an award-winning brain coach and international speaker, and people from all walks of life hire me to accelerate the results because most are frustrated, confused, and so lost that they can't find a path to their true goals. So I help them create rapid breakthroughs in their self-esteem and self-acceptance and peace of mind so they can move on to have the fulfilled life they really want. So I came to the US many years ago from Poland, and I came without a penny. And over the years, I was able to build a high six-figure business without previous business experience and with no contacts. I also created my proprietary modality called Brain Upgrade, and I helped at least 5,000 people over the years to skyrocket their self-esteem, self-acceptance, their personal and business results. My unique recipe for your true self is published by Nightingale Conant and is available on Audible. It's an audio program called Your Secret Brain. Discover how a brain upgrade can give you peace of mind, joy, and more fulfillment in your life. So, of course, I wasn't always where I am now. My journey to my own true self was like a winding path through the mountains. I was sure who I was because I pursued my passions and I changed professions according to what my passion was at the time. So I went from being a translator to being a modern dancer, to being a yoga teacher, to being an opera singer, and eventually to be a consultant and a brain coach. So I thought I knew who I was. I'll be looking at my notes from time to time because I want to stay on topic. It's so easy to get distracted and go off on an angle. So when I encountered new techniques that were teaching how to organize the brain, and I started to use those tools for the first time, I started to feel that there was a new sense of self. And I didn't know there was something missing. But when I had that new feeling, I realized that even though I thought I knew who I was, but that was a new self. There was a new sense of who I was. And I wonder whether you are in the same boat. I wonder whether you also are wondering whether there is something missing in your experience. So up till the time of my discovery with those brain exercises, I was an avid practitioner for years of all the different modalities, such as positive thinking and visualization, affirmation, meditation, and yoga. Of course, I was teaching yoga. That was profound, but it didn't give me the results that I wanted in terms of this sense of fulfillment and knowing who I was. And I wonder whether you're working with those modalities too. And how is that working for you? If you are still frustrated and beating yourself up and angry with yourself about different things and struggling to be your true self or to discover your true self, I'm glad you're here today. Because today, I'm going to show you some proven, simple, but extremely effective techniques to overcome your frustration with yourself. That's the most important thing. So that you can finally have the self-acceptance and self-worth and move forward in your life from the sense of who you really are. We are going to explore why the previous approaches didn't quite work, and we are going to dissolve obstacles that are stopping you from being who you really are. I will give you new understandings and practical tools today, right in this presentation, that you can easily use daily to move forward towards greater self-acceptance. These tools are surprisingly simple, and you can do them in minutes. I know that you are busy, and everybody these days is really busy, but these tools are so fast and simple that I'm sure you will be motivated to use them for yourself. And if you stay to the end today, I'm going to have some gifts for you. And on top of that, I'm going to give you everything I possibly can in the time we have available, which is between 30 and 40 minutes. And I'm going to also introduce you to some additional resources and how I might support you from here. Okay? So how is that? I'm sure that you and the rest of our participants today would want to know how to live from your true self. And I will take you on that journey. But first, let me tell you a story about Kate and her sisters. So here's this girl, Kate. She is very temperamental. She's angry, and you can't have a conversation with her, and nobody wants to marry her. On the other hand, she has two sisters. That's too early. Paula, thank you for the picture, but we need to wait till much later. So Kate's two sisters are sweet and agreeable, and everybody wants to marry them. So eventually all three of them get married, and a year later they have a reunion together with their husbands. And in that reunion, Kate is sweet and agreeable and has a loving relationship with her husband. And her sisters turned into shrews, and they are very rude, ordering their husbands around and being very domineering. Maybe you recognize the story, right? Anyway, which of these behaviors do you think was their true nature? So we'll find out at the end. So how can you tell when you are in your true nature? So that brings me to our obstacle number one. And I think you'll be very surprised to hear that your brain is not your own. All right? What does that mean? How could that be? Of course, you have a brain, right? And yet I'm telling you that your brain is not your own. So this is why. And I was going to have a picture, but it turned out that these pictures ended up being printed backwards. So I will send them to you at the end if you stay to the end of this presentation, and I'll send you all the pictures and handouts that we are going to need today. So you can just imagine, here's the left side of your brain, which is showing on the right side of your screen. So left brain is verbal, analytical, and likes to focus on details, but especially it's verbal and logical. So when you are born, you don't really have a left brain. You have a rudimentary structure for your left brain, which is going to develop later, but essentially you don't have the function. So what is the function of your left brain at that time? It's your parents and other grown-ups who are around you and giving you verbal input. And what is that verbal input? I think you may recall things that you heard when you were a child. So I think the research has shown that children hear about 7 to 9 negative messages to 1 positive one. So the verbal input at those early years is don't touch, don't move, don't be silly, don't be angry, don't be scared, don't. Be a good boy, be a good girl, behave yourself, keep your voice down, stop running, and all that stuff. And some even more shaming or abusive statements. So all these words are imprinting on your left brain. So when your left brain matures around the age of 8 and you start using it on your own, guess what words are already in there? You have internalized, or we call it imprinting. The words have imprinted on your left brain. So this is what you now say to yourself because you've internalized it. So therefore, you can see that your left brain is not your own. It has been possessed or occupied by the verbal input from other people. So what happens to your right brain? Your right brain is one of the main functions of the right brain is to govern emotions and be connected with the body. So let me tell you a story about what I have observed, what happens to the right brain. So when I teach a workshop and how to work with emotions, I often start with asking people who are fully functional grown-ups to list all the different things, negative things they heard in childhood. And these are the things that I just told you about, which you may also recall yourself, such as bad girl, bad boy, behave yourself, stop this, don't touch it, and you should be ashamed of yourself, I'll show you, and whatever else, so there's a long list of these words. Then I ask participants to pretend that they are carefree children and just play around the room. And after a minute or two of that play, I start reading those negative messages to them from the chart we created. And what is absolutely astonishing, within minutes, those fully adult professional people stop playing and very clearly separate into 2 groups, the fear paralyzed group and the anger polarized group. So the fear group, of course, is cowering in the corner. The anger group is starting to act out, throw things, say things back, and so their body language, their behavior matches where they are emotionally. So this is what happens to your right brain. Your right brain is in reaction to the abusive or disrespectful left brain. So therefore, your right brain is not your own either. And this is why I tell you that your brain is not your own. And this is what this conditioned response is what's in the way or overshadows your true self. In addition to that, of course, it creates a sense of guilt and shame and all the different things that people struggle with, and maybe you struggle with too. I certainly see that in my practice when I work with my clients. So the obstacle number 1 to being your true self is that your brain is not your own, because now when you're a grown-up, you continue to beat yourself up, and then you are also in reaction to that. So you're either scared or rebellious in different aspects. So that takes us to obstacle number 2, because obstacle number 2 has to do with the fact that the most common approach in our culture to any kind of self-improvement is that positive thinking will fix everything. If you just think positive thoughts and you have positive expectations and you make an intention every day, good things will happen. And on top of that, you are not supposed to feel of the any negative emotions. You're not say anything negative at all, because that will make you into a negative person. So just want to ask you, if you use affirmations, or if you are trying to think positively, do you hear a little voice somewhere in the background that says, "Who are you kidding? This is not true"? All right. Well, this voice is actually your real self. That will also get a little bit further with that. So let me tell you a story about positive thinking that happened to me and why I needed to move beyond it. So at the time when I was so avidly practicing positive thinking and all those other wonderful modalities, I was living in a small building where the building manager, for some reason, didn't like me and turned all the other tenants against me, and they were trying to get me out of the building through ways legal and not legal. But I was very positive. I was affirming positive outcomes. I was blessing them. I was forgiving them. I was blessing the situation, and all these other things that we are supposed to do when we are in that state. Well, they did kick me out of the building eventually, and it took me many years to understand that instead of being so positive, I needed to acknowledge that those people were really scary. They were threatening me in many ways. And instead of being so positive and blessing them, I should have acknowledged that I was really scared. I should have processed my fear, found my anger, and learned how to stand up for myself. So that was a very interesting lesson. It took me quite a long time to learn it. And I wonder whether you had any experiences like that too, because I think it's pretty common. People are so attached to being quote unquote positive. I had the experience not too long ago when I was talking to an old friend of mine who is very much into the spiritual things. And I said that I had a bad experience with certain organization because people that didn't like me. And she said, like, "You can't say that, you are creating negativity." And I said, "No, this is a fact that they did A, B, C, and D." So eventually she said, "Oh, I see, I think you may be right." So I think we'll get to that a little bit later, but I think there is just this denial of what actually is going on when you are too much in this positive state of mind. And that also clouds your ability to be real. So your true self is being overshadowed by your need to be positive and think positively and use all the positive tools in your toolbox. And I think what makes things even worse is that whenever these tools don't work for somebody, the experts say, guess what? I think you probably heard that. The experts say, well, you're not working hard enough. You're not doing it right. It's your fault because you should be doing it better, more often, and more whatever, right? It's your fault. And this is what I found so surprising with all the, not only with positive thinking, but with all the learning modalities currently available, that if something doesn't work, it's mostly your fault because you should be doing differently. However, the fault is really with the system. So when we have more time, when I have more time or talk about a different topic in my presentations, I talk about the difference between what I call the common learning paradigm and the new learning paradigm. The common learning paradigm assumes that you're your mind, so you will just do everything with your mind. And if you're learning something, you should just listen to the learning, whatever they teach you and tell you to do, and then you'll move right into doing it. And if you don't move right into doing, well, then it's your fault, because obviously you're not doing it right. So the same thing happens with positive thinking, as I just described. So I have words of comfort for you, which is, it is not your fault. Okay? You can totally let yourself off the hook. It's not your fault. The fault is with the system. Positive thinking has a completely incorrect assumption. And let's do a little experiment so you will actually experience what I'm talking about. So think about a mildly stressful situation. Not very stressful, because I want to be able to move on in reasonable amount of time. So I want you to think about a mildly stressful situation and observe what is your reaction in your body, in your emotions, and also in your mind. So give yourself a few seconds to evaluate that. And now I'm going to give you a minute, or about a minute, to improve that with whatever positive techniques are in your repertoire, okay? So whatever you know that you should be doing, try to get yourself out of that stressful reaction, and I will tell you when to stop. So go ahead and do it. Again, thanks for the picture, but we'll do that a little bit later in the third obstacle. All right, so this is about a minute. So how did that work? Do you feel much better? All right, let's do something to compare it with. So now, again, think about either the same situation if it didn't improve, or think about another mildly stressful situation. But this time we are going to do a physical, very gentle physical experience called exercise called self-hug. And this is how you do it. You reach forward with your arms, turn your thumbs down, cross your wrists, interlace your fingers, and then bend your elbows and rest your hands on your chest. While you're doing that, you also need to cross your ankles, and that is called self-hug. And in addition to that, you can very gently place the tongue behind your upper teeth. And if you want, you can also close your eyes. And I'm also going to give you a minute of sitting in this position while you're processing your mildly stressful situation. And we'll see what happens. I'm going to show this exercise again because sometimes people don't get it the first time. So reach forward, thumbs down, cross your wrists, interlace your fingers, bend your elbows, and rest your hands on your chest. And then cross your ankles, and then gently touch the tongue behind your upper teeth. And we'll still have about half a minute to a minute. Okay, that's about a minute. So you uncross your hands, touch your fingertips together, and rest them in your lap. Put your feet down on the floor, and we'll take just a few more seconds for you to finish this exercise. And you can, if you want, you can close your eyes for another moment, touch the tongue behind your upper teeth, and I'll tell you when to stop. All right, good. So this is again called self-hug, and when you do it on your own, of course you can take a lot more time, but we are, in the presentation when we need to move forward. So I just wanted to do a little experiment. So now observe how you feel about your mildly stressful situation. If you're like most people, you will feel quite a bit more relaxed compared to trying to just do it with the positive set of mind. Okay? So, which approach made a bigger difference? As I said, if you're like most people, this approach should have made a bigger difference. Now, of course, you may be wondering why this works, or how this works. So I'm going to let you in on a secret. And it's so new that I want you to pay attention, extra focused. So the new cutting edge neuroscience says that intelligence is in your body and your mind is an outcome of what happens in your body. All right, I'm going to say it again because for most people it's a shock, because our whole culture is based on the fact that mind controls everything, and you can use your mind to control your body, which to some degree you can. However, this completely new neuroscience says the opposite. Intelligence is in your body, and the mind, your mind, is an outcome of what happens in your body. Now, I've been working with these principles for over 25 years, and I'm really happy that neuroscience is catching up with me and my colleagues who have been pioneering this approach, because now there is a science called embodied cognition. Embodied means it's in your body, and cognition means it's your intellectual functions. You're actually thinking, reasoning, and all that other stuff. And it's embodied, which means it comes from your body. And there is a book that I absolutely love to quote. It's called Intelligence in the Flesh by a British neuroscientist called Guy Claxton. And here's one of my favorite quotes. And he says, "So where is your brain? It is all over your body. And what is your brain? It is currents of information from all corners of your body." So let's discuss that. First of all, I'm going to say it again. So where is your brain? Your brain is all over your body. So it's no longer just an isolated organ in your head. Your brain is a diffuse communication network that involves your whole body. And what is it? It's currents of information. All right? So completely changes the paradigm, because in two ways. First of all, your brain is no longer perceived as a solid organ, so you have to have a completely different approach to fixing your brain. So if you are dealing, let's say, with a table and there is a missing piece or something is broken, you use a hammer and chisel or something and you fix it. But if you're dealing with a computer, most likely you're not going to use a hammer. It's much more subtle. There are these very tiny circuits that you don't even see, and it takes a specialist to figure it out. So this is the difference between dealing with your brain as a solid organ and dealing with your brain as an information network and currents of information from all corners of your body. So that completely changes how you need to operate, essentially. As I mentioned to you before, I teach the transition from the common learning paradigm, when the mind predominates and everything is related to the mind and mind will control everything, to the new learning paradigm. The new learning paradigm, when you use your mind and body together, especially your body, because your mind depends on how your body functions. So in a new learning paradigm, if you want to use your mind, you need to engage your body, and not in just anyway, but in very specific ways. And you don't have to go to the gym, because you can do it right now, and we just did. That was one of the exercises that belong in the new learning paradigm, and they have a immediately organizing effect on your brain. By the way, I think most people already have the experience that movement is very, very beneficial for thinking, and that your mind depends on movement, because many people report that if they go to the gym, or they go for a walk, or they go for a swim, or some other physical activity, their thinking becomes more clear, and they often can solve a problem they've been working on. So it's kind of like, we already know that, but most of the time people do not put the dots together. So I'm inviting you to put the dots together right now for yourself, and understand that in the new learning paradigm, if you use your body, your mind will work better in very specific ways. So one of the exercises that you now have in a repertoire is self-hug. And we are going to use that again very shortly. There is one more obstacle that's going to trip you up on your way to your self-acceptance and being your true self, and that is the misconception that there are positive and negative emotions. And what follows from that, if you feel negative emotions, then you are a negative person, and of course then you don't want to feel the negative emotions, because of course, who wants to be a negative person? I already told you about my experience with fear, which I didn't want to acknowledge at that time, because I wanted to be very, very, very positive. And you may have heard also very common sayings like, you're either in love or in fear. So many people don't want to acknowledge their fear, because of course then you will not be loving, and of course who wants not to be loving? So then you put this judgment on yourself that you can't feel fear. Well, I have some news for you, several pieces of news actually. One is that all emotions are positive, okay? All of your emotions are positive, and actually the so-called negative emotions are even more positive than the positive emotions. All right, I'll keep you in suspense for a moment, because who would have thought that, right? Your negative emotions are actually more positive. So let's see, refer to my notes to remember what my next point was. I want to tell you about my research that I did to discover what's going on with emotions. So my research consisted of crying for months, because I really wanted to get to the bottom of what was upsetting me and why I was upset. And my main emotional expression was crying. So I cried and cried and cried and cried, but it was actually worth it, because eventually I discovered what is at the bottom of the so-called negative emotions. And it was so simple that I was convinced that everybody already knew that. But as it turns out, even now, hardly anybody knows it. So I'm going to share it with you. But before I share it with you, I'm going to give you another quote from my favorite author, Mr. Claxton, to help you understand that feelings are not a nuisance. So this is a very short quote. Feelings are not wayward and primitive. They are somatic events that embody your values and concerns. Okay? So somatic means they are in your body, and they embody your values and concerns, which is emotions and feelings are part of your true nature. They embody your values and concerns. Okay? So the emotions are not in your mind, which is the common concept in our Western culture. And because they embody those values and your concerns, then they are vital to your true nature. Okay, so would you be interested to know what I discovered? All right, so here it comes. The reason why you have so-called negative emotions is to let you know when your needs are not being met. Okay? So I'll say that again. The reason why you have so-called negative emotions is to let you know when your needs are not being met. That experience I told you about earlier when I teach this workshop and I say all these negative things to the participants and they have a reaction to that, their needs are not being met. They are being disrespected, they are being neglected, they are being often abused and not treated well, and these are very fundamental needs. So they have emotional reaction of polarized to fear or anger. And by the way, you have a part of your brain that does that. It's called the amygdala. And it automatically creates reactions of fear or anger. So they are part of your biological equipment. You really can't get away from them. You just need to learn how to work with them. So based on my discovery, it's quite obvious that you should not escape from your negative emotions, you should not push them away, you should not avoid them, and you should not lift out of them. You should learn how to work with them, because if you don't work with them, you will never know what your needs are, and they will just continue to be there because that's their purpose. The purpose is for them to tell you, hey, your needs are not being met in this situation, you need to take care of that. So I developed a 3-step process, which is relatively simple. And when you learn how to do it, it only takes 15 minutes, but it takes a while to learn it. So I will share just the first step with you, but it's a very fundamental step because it's going to broaden your understanding of your emotions and will give you self-acceptance. Okay, so I think this is where we want to have our chart. So Paula, please put that chart on the screen and I'll tell you what it is. Thank you so much. So this is a 5-element cycle based on Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine is based on meridian flows, and meridian flows control your physical, emotional, and mental aspects as well. But primarily because they are physical, they control internal organs. It confirms this understanding that emotions are somatic events. They are in your body. They come from your or related to your internal organs. So if you don't use your emotions correctly, then you're going to be causing damage to your internal organs. All right? So it's not worth it. And what we are going to do with this cycle is we are going to use it for accepting your emotions. And I'm going to guide you through this. And while you do that, I want you to engage your body and do this self-hug exercise you had just learned. So let me show you again. Get into that position, and we are going to spend between 5 and 7 minutes going through this cycle. So reach forward with your arms, turn your thumbs down, cross your wrists and interlace your fingers, bend your elbows, rest your hands on your chest, and then also cross your ankles. You can lean back, you can even lie down, and you can keep your eyes open or closed, whatever works for you. And I'm going to give you instructions about what to do as we go through this cycle. Okay, so the first instruction is you quietly say to yourself, I now accept and express all of my emotions. And as you say that to yourself quietly, observe what is your internal reaction. So I'll give you a second to process that. Okay, now we are going to travel through the cycle, starting with element of joy. So theoretically, joy is a very positive emotion and there should not be a problem with it. However, you can reflect for a moment how many judgments you heard about being joyful when you were a child. Many children are taught they are too loud or too rambunctious, or they are disturbing the grown-ups, or it's not appropriate. and so on. So I want you to take a few seconds to reflect on whatever negative judgments you heard about your expression or feeling of joy. And now I want you to acknowledge to yourself that joy is a completely legitimate part of your emotional equipment. It doesn't bother really anyone, and you have a right to feel it. So I want you to say to yourself quietly or out loud if you prefer, I now accept and express my joy. Take a deep breath and slowly exhale. We're going to travel counterclockwise into the emotion of anger. So anger has really bad reputation. It's one of those negative emotions, and you're not supposed to feel it. So as I told you, anger is part of your biological equipment, and you just have it because anger lets you know when you are in danger. And anger often doesn't give you accurate information because you have a backlog of unexpressed and unprocessed anger. And we need to separate feeling anger from behavior. So feeling is inside of you. You can feel it. You can express it verbally to yourself, but you don't have to act on it. That's a misconception that makes many people scared about anger. So it's very important to separate feelings from action. And this is what we are going to be also achieving in this cycle. So take a moment to reflect on all the judgments that you heard and you felt yourself about anger. And then acknowledge that anger is just a legitimate part of your biological equipment, and you have a right to feel it. And say to yourself quietly or out loud, I now accept and express my anger. And take a deep breath, slowly exhale. We are going to now move to the element of fear. So fear also has bad reputation, and most children heard mostly many times, don't be scared, there's nothing scary, and so on. In fact, a lot of things are really scary. So fear is the other part of your alarm mechanism of the amygdala. So it's, again, biologically programmed into you. And fear, just like anger, gives you information when you're in danger. And just like anger, you get inappropriate signals because there is such a backlog of unprocessed fear that you often respond with fear to situations that may not be actually scary. But the path out of that is to start acknowledging and processing your fear, and then it will diminish, and then you will not be so scared. So take a moment to reflect on all the judgments you have heard or felt about fear. Acknowledge to yourself that it's legitimate and you have a right to feel it, and say to yourself quietly or out loud, I now accept and express my fear. And take a deep breath and slowly exhale. And we are going to now move into elements of grief and regret. And again, these are legitimate emotions. You have a right to feel them. They may not have such a bad reputation as fear or anger, but they're still not encouraged. So to make it very brief, feeling grief and regret is a really good way to allow yourself to let go of things. Okay, so the more you actually grieve, the easier it is to let go. Okay, so again, take a moment to reflect on the judgments that you heard or felt about experiencing sadness, grief, and regret. And then acknowledge that they are legitimate feelings and you have a right to feel them. And take a deep breath and slowly exhale. And now we are going to go to the element of empathy and compassion. That should be easy, right? Because we are all encouraged to be more compassionate. However, compassion towards yourself is not really fully present for most people. So in this cycle, I invite you and encourage you to focus on compassion towards yourself. What does that look like? It looks like what you would say in an encouraging way to a small child who is scared, sad, or angry. And I want you to turn internally towards the parts of you that you were just experiencing. And I want you to say to them quietly, it's okay. You have a right to feel that. I'm with you. I will help you deal with that. We'll solve it together. You are safe. So now also acknowledge that compassion towards yourself is just as important as compassion towards others. And quietly or out loud, say to yourself, I now accept and express my compassion towards myself. And take a deep breath. Slowly exhale. And we're going to now go back to joy. So pay attention to how joy feels now after you travel through the other emotions. And to complete the cycle, say to yourself quietly or out loud, I now accept and express all of my emotions and observe how that feels now compared to the first time. So it's time to complete your self-hug. Touch your fingertips together, uncross your feet, rest your hands in your lap, and take a moment to observe how differently you feel now compared to how you felt before we did this cycle. Most people at this point experience greater peace and calm and self-acceptance. Some people get very sleepy. Some people actually get more agitated because now they have to face their emotions. But I hope in your case, it actually goes towards being calmer and more accepting. So this is how you build your acceptance and you build your true nature, because all these emotions are part of your true nature. They have things to tell you, and the more you learn how to work with them, the easier it's going to be for you to be your true self.
Thank you, Paula. Just a reminder, well, our time is very limited, so if we can all pass on to the questions from the audience.
Yes, we are just wrapping it up. I just want to say that if you stay to the end, I'm going to send you the pictures that belong in this presentation. I'm going to send you the handouts with the chart and with the self-hug exercise. And also, I have reserved a few spots for people who want to take it further. So you can email me at paula@brainupgrade.biz. I'm going to say that again, Paula, Paula, at brain, like brain, and upgrade, like a computer upgrade, one word, brainupgrade.biz, with the subject line, Mindalia handouts. And I'll be very happy to send you all the materials and also reserve a spot for you for a consultation that's going to help you make rapid progress towards self-acceptance. Thank you so much for participating today. And thank you, Paula, for being the organizer of this presentation. And now I think we are ready for questions.
Of course. Thank you so much, Paula. If I could ask you to probably lower the volume of your laptop. I think we're having a little bit of an echo there.
Okay.
Well, before we continue with the questions from the audience, I would like to remind you all that Mindalia is a nonprofit organization, and our main goals are to promote solidarity by all means, and to promote also human knowledge. Also, if you would like,
I don't know how to lower the volume, because if I lower the volume, I can't hear you. But so we'll just
okay. I think we can work it through.
Stay with that.
Let me go on to the questions from the audience, and also remind everyone to please subscribe to our YouTube channel and to give us a like on this video. I'm going to have you on camera, and we'll go with the first question, okay? It says, what can we do to overcome fear or the conditions of our right, or the conditions that our right brain had learned?
So the first step is to do this acceptance of yourself when you feel fear. And so, of course, this exercise that I taught you, the self-hug, lowers the level of stress and it lowers the level of fear. So you need to do something like that to diminish your level of fear. And then you can ask yourself, what is it that I'm really scared of? And instead of trying to persuade yourself that you shouldn't be scared of it, allow yourself to feel the fear. It may take only a few minutes. You can even write down all the messages that you're experiencing in fear. Many people have a lot of very, very negative messages. And if you work in the common learning paradigm, they'll tell you like, this is nonsense, you shouldn't feel that way. But actually you feel that way, so it's not nonsense, you just feel that way. You need to learn how to get out of that. So the first step will be to do self-hug. Second step will be to feel your fear. And the third step would be to either say or write down the content of your fear, such as, I'm going to lose all my friends, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to lose all my money, I'll be homeless, nobody will like me, and whatever is there. And I can guarantee you, if you express it through writing or speaking, or even thinking, even though speaking is better, you will diminish the level of fear. Beyond that, there are some other steps, but they are a little complicated. So I think that's all I can share right now. But I can guarantee you that if you just do that, you will feel less scared. Did that answer your question?
Let's hope so. Thank you, Paula. The next question says, embodied cognition. What is our body telling us about ourselves? Could our body tell us about our thoughts or emotions?
So embodied cognition means that your thinking comes from your body. And if you want to think better, you need to engage your body. So I don't know whether it says anything about ourselves. It just encourages you to be more embodied, to be more in your body, to feel your body, feel your feelings, and that will give you a much stronger foundation about how to go about your reality. I remember having a discussion about that with a woman who was my client, who was also a therapist, and we were talking about why there is such a powerful encouragement for people to deny their emotions. And she said, it's very simple, because emotions tell you what's really going on. And I guess some people don't want you to know that. So that's, I would say, that I would say is the lesson of embodied cognition. So as I said, I don't know whether it tells you anything about yourself, but it encourages you to feel your body, experience your senses, and feel your feelings.
All right, we're moving on to the next question. It says, how can we cope or use the so-called negative emotions according to your discipline?
Well, so the first thing is what I described in the first question, which is you need to feel them. You need to give yourself permission to actually experience what they are. And I can only describe the process because I don't have time to teach you this, which of course I'll be happy to do if you contact me later. But once you feel your feelings and you also verbalize the content of your anger or fear or sadness, then the next thing is to ask yourself, is this emotion coming from my present age or an earlier age? And it mostly comes from an earlier age. And then you ask that younger self, what do you really need? What is scaring you? What is making you angry? And what do you need to feel better? And that younger self will probably tell you. I had a very clear and concise experience of that with one of my clients, because she said, I never know what I want. And I said, I can guarantee you, your younger self knows. So she picked a situation in her present life where she was upset or distressed about something, not being able to get something done. And I asked her to get in touch with where that was coming from. And she very quickly got in touch with the fact it was coming from a much younger age, when she felt that nobody was paying attention to her. So I asked this younger self, what do you need? And she said, I need attention. So there it was. So I told this woman, well, see, you know what you need attention. So she said, but how is that going to help me deal with this problem? And I said, that's the next question. I don't know yet, but at least you know what you want. So that's essentially how you deal with these negative emotions. You get to the needs, and then they are no longer negative because you fulfill your need. I can just add that we have so many unfulfilled needs that it's a process. You know, I've been using this process for years, and I still get upset about certain things, and I then process that myself, and I find out what the need is, and I have to take care of it. So I have much fewer needs that are not taken care of, but I still have them. So don't be discouraged if you find that you have taken care of a need and it shows up again in a different context. So how is that?
Thank you, Paula. We have reached the last question of today, and it says, your negative emotions are a way to show you when your needs are not met. Does this mean that if we control our expectations, we will not suffer?
That's a great question. I think it's a Buddhist question, but it's not about expectations on the current level. They are very fundamental needs, such as safety, security, acknowledgement, recognition. There are very, very early needs, and we have them from the moment we are born. So lowering your expectations in your current age may not help you because these emotions are in your body already, and you will just be able to, when you get upset because your expectation is not being met, you'll be able to trace the emotions to what was my expectation, and what am I disappointed about. And as I said, mostly it's safety, security, respect, acknowledgement, being seen, being heard, being understood, and things like that. So it's not that difficult, and you can try to do it on your own. And of course, you can contact me for further learning. So thank you so much for staying to the very end. Thank you so much for your very enlightened questions. And again, if you email me at paula@brainupgrade.biz, I'm going to send you the handouts from today and answer any more questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Paula, for sharing all this information live with all of us. We'll give you a moment, please, to share your information so our Mindalia TV audience knows how to find you.
Could you say it again?
If you can share your information so the Mindalia TV audience knows how to find you, please.
Okay, so again, my website is www.brainupgrade.biz. It's not .com, it's .biz, B-I-Z. And my email is paula@brainupgrade.biz. So that's how you can reach me. You can also find me on Audible. If you search for Your Secret Brain, you will find the program that I created, which is available on Audible. So thank you very much, and get in touch with me. I'll be looking forward to hearing from you and your feedback.